for March, excuse me, it's an agenda item for March 9th, our last workshop. And I'm sure many of us, if you've gone through this, have questions about the audit findings, and so please take that one away too, Mr. President.
There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of interest in the status of the findings relative to the new board coming on, and for my interest as well. And I've been working with Paul to identify and establish how those findings are being addressed, what the results are, and where we stand as far as our requirements from the state and from the feds. And we did receive information from the FTA about 2 weeks ago relative to their interest in several specific areas that they believe will require some sort of payback from Island Transit. Projects and purchases that weren't included in the initial grant for the construction of this facility. All along we felt or had heard comments that there were certain things that maybe were questionable as far as being purchased with federal funds outside the scope of the project. But those items have become a little more definitive as far as the FTA is concerned. We've asked for more specifics relative to what those items are, and for us to determine or review what the justification of those items was at the time. And so in response to that concern, Paul and I have been working to go through all the grant items and to determine what items we can find that match what FTA requests are. And we need to provide a response to the FTA by June 30th. Paul has prepared a list of those items, the findings and our resolutions or projected resolutions to our decision making and the final answers for the findings. And was that included in the board packet?
No, I wasn't intending to hand this out, and partially because I've also contacted the state auditors to give us the detail that they've determined might need to be totaling a payback amount. And then they also had a portion that was projected. So as it stands right now, we haven't gone any further than what they originally reported, but they were going to get back to me this week with more details. So I thought that it'd be better just to wait and get their views on what it was that we needed to pay back, and then review the details further and before putting it out in any kind of report form.
It's something I think that the Finance Committee can review with Paul and bring perhaps a summary to the board meeting at the last Friday of the month.
When that information is available,
Yeah.
when it's confirmed.
Well, and this distinction between projected and not projected is a little confusing, I think. It doesn't change the numbers, but we need to know what that is. That a state audit assumption, or is it a FTA?
That's a state audit assumption. They review items and they find certain items that they think maybe don't belong as part of the grant, and then because of their limited budget, they can't review every item, so they just project a certain percentage based off of the sample that they've taken.
And projection also can be defined as uncertainty in terms of the definition of whether or not those items are eligible or not. And so there are a couple of things that we may want to challenge, but again, projected, not knowing actually what may be reimbursable or not. But I think even if we do come to conclusion that maybe some costs still aren't justifiable, that we could provide a worst case scenario, and then work from there as time goes on.
At this time, do you have a preliminary worst-case scenario?
It's about 140.
If we just take what the state auditor said, they said 130,000.
130.
And is that in our current budget, that amount of money? Where is that money going to come from as we're talking today?
Some from reserves that we've been building, and hopefully from additional and ongoing cost reductions that we've been implementing over the last several months.
Is it possible to work out a scheduled payback period or a payback plan for doing this? Is that something that's typically a practice of the auditor's office?
Yeah, I spoke with the FTA about that, and they said it's not typical to do a payback plan.
It is not, or it is?
It is not. Generally, the way they do it is they just reduce the amounts that you were reimbursed with your other grants. So if you apply for a reimbursement, say $100,000 for service that you would be reimbursed for federal funds, they would just not return that to you as a reduction of any amounts that you might owe the federal government.
So the next question that I have then is, have we received all of the money from this grant right now, today?
There's, I think, 95,000 still remaining on the grant that we're not planning to use, which we would pay a portion of that. You know, I think it's an 80-20 match. But it really doesn't come into play with this issue because of the money that we spent for these items, we were reimbursed for that already. So that would be the reason for owing money, is that we've already been reimbursed for those items that we purchased.
They have to give it back then. Okay, then I'm going to just ask a couple more questions before I turn it back. I have spent quite a few hours with the staff and the director, even going through the building. I mean, we've got the issues with the grant for building construction. Then we have issues with the contractor and the product delivery. Plus, there, as my understanding, is meeting with staff and going through some documents we have where there's some retentions that have been withheld that are owing to a number of subcontractors. The deeper I get into this thing, the deeper the hole gets. Let's see. How are we going to address that in turning this building, getting a certificate of completion with this grant, and still settle up with the contractors so that the subcontractors get paid? I think there's something like $500,000 owing to subcontractors out there. Do you have any plan or comment how we're going to tie the acceptance of the, this is kind of a blindside question, I really should apologize to you. We need to settle up with the feds and the state on the grant side for compliance before you can really settle up with the contractor, because we don't want to release them without having the supply side of that equation taken care of.
As I understand the situation from various reports and studies and findings, some of which have recently been done, that the remaining item for this facility that's still outstanding is this resolution to that floor issue, the cracking in the inferior product that was provided for the flooring throughout the facility. And at this point, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to, in my estimation, bring in an outside independent source to give us a fix and find out where the blame lies. At staff level, we've gone through the documents. I think we've found, for the most part, that it's been a finger-pointing sort of exercise, and we need some final determination as to how the floor is going to be fixed and who's going to pay for it. I know that our legal counsel has gone through the performance bond and looked at other documents that could hold the contractor's feet to the fire, but I think we need a hard and fast decision and strong direction without taking any legal action.
I don't want to get too much into a discussion about possible legal action. In fact, I'm not even going to comment on that. When we get to that stage of the conversation, we'll go into executive session.
Sure.
But I would like to see post haste on our next workshop that we have a proposal from staff to give you some time to get some of the records, because records maintenance that I have found through this building process is not the best. Okay? But you need some time to get through it so that we can get to the answers. But we have to establish a process and a schedule on how we're going to approach this and what the relationship is to possible litigation, if at all. Hopefully it would be something that can be resolved without involving litigation. It's always cheapest for all the parties, in my experience. Any comments on that topic from the board?
Not on that topic, but I wanted to go back to the list that Paul's developing. So I understand that there's the clarification of definitions on how something could be eligible and not eligible. If things are deemed not eligible, which I haven't seen what's on that list, but those items can be surplus, right? There's no grant requirement that would keep us from selling those items to try to recoup some of our costs.
Well, two of the items that were advertised in that auditor's report, one was the gazebos and one was the tractor. So potentially, I think, the tractor would be easiest to surplus if that was a desire. Gazebo a little harder because they've already been weathered. Some of the items that were mentioned were maintenance operating supplies. So I would imagine that some of those were already consumed. Yeah, that's part of the maintenance operating.
There are a number of consumables on that list.
And then the other item was an in-kind match that was taken, and the auditor stated that there was an amount that should not have been allowed. So I would imagine we'd have to pay that back possibly. But it comes down to us outlining and defining for FTA to present to the Office of Management and Budget, and they will make a determination and get back to us.
Jim? Rick?
Bill asked my question.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this item before we move on? Thank you very much, staff, for that report and for the public's interest. The board is working hard at digging into a lot of these deep holes to try to fill in the deficit someplace in an economical way. Next agenda item. That takes us off the workshop item. We're now going to move into the special meeting. During the special meeting, session, we have 2 items, and we will allow public comments for each of these. The public comments are restricted or limited to 3 minutes, and for the sake of time, we would appreciate if somebody uses their 3 minutes and you happen to agree with them, please just state that you agree with them and don't repeat what they said, and so we can move this thing along. So, special meeting item number 1, the resolution regarding 6-15, Board of Directors of Island County Public Transportation Benefit Area Corporation, which is Island Transit, amending the Island Transit bylaws, Article 2, the governing body, board composition, and action item from March 27, 2015, board meeting. And please, Mr. Grassley, if you proceed with that one.
Okay, in your packet, under the special meeting item number 1, you have copies of a resolution which referred to state RCW requiring the Board of Directors to open 1 new additional position on the board for a labor representative in the case of the union, or a union being established at our transit agency, and the union having that representative serve as a non-voting representative on the board. The union does have a representative here today that is being proposed to serve in that position, and we're meeting the requirements of RCW, which was established about 7 years ago now.
3 or 4 years ago.
3 or 4? Okay. Again, applying to all public transit benefit areas that have an organized labor force. And with that, I'll leave it at that. I think all the information and requirements are included in your packet, and I'll try to answer any questions I can, although Matt has much more experience in this particular topic.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to the presentation?
I'll just say that the language in the resolution and in the amended bylaws is pretty much straight out of the statute.
Consistent with the RCW, okay. Then I'm going to turn that to the public for any public comments regarding this topic. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes, and like I said before, if you agree with somebody, please say you agree with them instead of repeating. Lauderdale.
Jeff Lauderdale, Cookville. Just a question, has the union actually been established at Island Transit at this point in time, or is that still in process?
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
It's
Comments? We'll answer questions once we've had the public comments, and then, okay. Any other comments? Yes.
Gail Southwick. If it's the wording that I saw on the website, especially when it comes to the union, if it's that same wording that's on the business item, what have you, that was posted on the website, that may need to be changed, because there's a lawsuit about that from Mr. Norton.
Okay, keep the conversations directed to the board, but could you be more specific about your question or comment? I'm not.
Basically, the wording in the states pretty much gives the chair or the vice chair a reason, or the ability to control removing that union member, the non-voting union member, from attending any and all executive sessions. And particularly what that's doing is that's taking the rights that are afforded by the state away on a local level.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments from? Hearing none, we're going to answer those questions up here. And first of all, let's start with Mr. Lauderdale's question. Has a union been established at the Island Transit? And that question is going to be for legal or for you, Ken?
The union has been established, formally established here. The Amalgamated Transit Union is now represented here. And that has been formally recognized by the National Labor Relations Board.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question is the ability for the, I believe the chair or the vice chair to remove a union member from the board or from the executive session. When I read this, the resolution 6-15, it says the chairperson or the vice chairperson of the corporation will exclude the non-voting member from attending any executive session held for the purpose of discussing negotiations with labor organizations. The chairperson or the vice chairperson shall also have the ability to exclude the non-voting member from attending any other executive session. So to answer that question, my question for you, legal counsel, is that language consistent with the RCWs?
It is, yes.
Okay.
There's a case out there interpreting that, but this is the law hasn't been changed.
Okay, so we are going to go by the law as it presently exists, and we will.
We'll apply with guidance. I mean,
Okay.
that's an individual question on each executive session, and we'll apply with it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we have answered the questions from the floor, and so now I will close the public comment period and go to the board for comments and action.
Matt, can you give an example of an executive session where we would include the labor representative and an executive session outside of contract negotiations where we may exclude the labor representative?
Well, again, it would be discretionary, but there's certain times and places where you might want to have the viewpoint of the labor for, say, buying a piece of property or something like that. That would be one we may include. And that's good. Again, the way it's written, the discretion lies with the chair on most of these decisions. Other ones where you may want to exclude would be some topic you thought might be of something that would be possibly at odds with the future labor negotiations down the road. So, and again, it's one of those ones where you're going to have to look at each particular item as it comes up.
So I'm trying to grasp a little bit, because my board experience at the county is that when unions file a grievance or there is a labor type of complaint, that those do come to the board and we develop sometimes legal strategy around.
And that would be an example where you would, yeah.
And labor would not be a part of those conversations as it relates to labor action.
Correct. And that's actually, that's in the statute. That's right there. So.
Any comments from this side of the, Jim, do you have any comment? I have one, and that is, and welcome Mr. Norton, by the way. I have your resume here and it speaks highly of you. But I would like to know what is the process other than by this resolution? How do we identify the name of the person, or is that person to the board going to be selected by the labor?
Well, the way it's, again, this part of the statute isn't in there, but we're lucky that we have one, so we don't have dueling representative units for that. That's where it's a little tricky. But when you have one single bargaining unit within the entity, then they get to basically nominate that person.
Okay, so.
And we have it in here that they get by February of every year, there's an annual
Right.
submitting of the letter.
So we have a legal document, or a document, from the union appointing Mr. Norton if the board approves this resolution. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that answers my question. And, you know, we're going to take an action because we're already with the board, and we don't do cross the table audience conversations here, but we're going to give you a chance to speak as soon as you're admitted to the board, and we are going to take that action right now. Fair enough?
Fair.
Any further conversations regarding this agenda item? And hearing none, then I will call for the vote. Yes, I will call for the vote, and I'll ask for a motion, excuse me, getting ahead of myself. I will call for a motion.
So I would move to approve resolution number 6-15 of the Board of Directors of the Island County Public Transportation Benefit Area Corporation, Island Body Board composition.
I second it.
Okay, a motion has been made by Ms. Henderson to accept the resolution number 6-15, and second by Mr. Sundberg. Any further discussion?
This really isn't optional, correct?
No. RCW says it's complying with the RCW. We have no choice.
Any other discussion? Then I will call for the vote. All those in favor of resolution number 6-15 say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Hearing none, the resolution is passed unanimously. Welcome, Mr. Norton. Now you may speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I feel the love already. I would just like to explain to Ms. Johnson, you had asked legal counsel regarding any issues regarding perhaps personnel issues. For example, if the board was to consider human resources wanting to suggest to the board that a termination should be, or in response to an unfair labor practice, perhaps the union was filed, something of that nature. It is the prerogative of the chairperson, the vice chairperson, if he or she wishes to allow the union representative into an executive session that you're dealing with an issue like that. That is permissible under this RCW. The union accepts the obvious no inclusions on labor negotiations. That would be a conflict, I understand that. But one of the reasons that the Amalgamated Transit Union, and Matthew, I stand to correct you, it was not 4 or 5 years ago, it was almost 7 years ago when we got this passed down in Olympia.
My hair's turning very...
No, I understand, time just flies. One of the reasons was because in most cases, the labor representative has a lot of knowledge regarding personnel issues, for example. I, for one, have spent 45 years representing people in labor, both represented and non-represented. I am not demeaning anyone on the board, but in public transit, it's different from other businesses, other industry and whatnot. So I possibly could be, at your discretion, the vice chair's discretion, or if you or the vice chair elected to have the rest of the board vote on including the labor representative, we might be able to give a different perspective or information through our experience on a decision you might make in the areas that I mentioned. That's all I would like to clarify. And that gives you, the vice chair, or the majority of the board, that option.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norton. And I was remiss in not noticing the clock. It's 11:30. I think we need a vote to extend this until...
I make a motion to extend until 12.
All right, there's been a motion made by Mr. Johnson to extend this till 12. Is there a second? And Mr. Henold second that motion. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed? None opposed. We're going to go until 12 o'clock. Thank you, Jesse. I saw you watching that clock. All right. Thank you, Mr. Norton, for your insights on that, and we're looking forward to having you on the board.
Thank you.
And the final item is special meeting item number 2, future status of Route 411 West and 411C. This is action that was on the March 27 board meeting, and presentation again will be by staff. Welcome again, Sean. You've got 20 minutes, 1 minute will be for us to wrap this up.
All right, so as the operations staff, we were asked to come up with limited service proposals, and we were able to come up with 2. These proposals are the absolute bare bones that Island Transit will have to make a decision on what it wants to do. And in the first proposal, what it's showing for the 411W is that we would propose to cut it to 3 trips, and this is without any funding from the state. So if that doesn't go through, these are things we're trying to think of what could be done. So we would propose to cut that from 13 trips to 3 trips, 77% reduction, and then we've added the annual cost for that, as well as the 6-month cost. For the 411C,
Is that a cost savings or a cost incurred to keep the 3 trips?
incurred to keep the 3 trips.
Okay.
So the 411C, we've proposed to cut that from 9 trips to 3 trips, which is a 67% reduction. And again, we've added the annual cost as well as the 6-month cost. So that's without any additional funding from the state, and obviously that would have to be voted on by the board. The other proposal is if they decide not to go that direction, what we have is we would have a gap in service for the north end of Whidbey Island, which voted into service a while back. And so we have places like Deception Pass, and so if the 411s go away, there's no service from Oak Harbor to Deception Pass. And so what we added in there was 6 trips, and that would be funded by Island Transit. And again, we've added the annual cost and the 6-month cost, and that would be 9 runs suspended on Camino. And those would be the 9 runs they're currently running, the 411C. Some notes here. So the first proposal, ridership would be significantly impacted by a reduction